Welcome to Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network. Scott Jackson and Anthony Armstrong here with you as we get to take a look at the practice between the Commanders and the Patriots. Anthony, always good to be with you. Of course, we'll also hit some Terry drama as that continues, the holdout situation, and we're proud to bring in Lake Lewis here. But before we introduce Lake to the world, Anthony, tell everybody what they need to do.
Your little activities, you have it every time. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you've done that, share it with somebody so they can do the same thing. We got to spread this love to get this Bleav in Commanders show rolling.
All right, Lake Lewis Jr. is with us all over Commanders coverage. Lake, first of all, tell people where they can find you because I feel like you're everywhere, so I don't want to shortchange any of your many ventures.
Yes, it's venturing. You can check me out first and foremost on social media, Lake Lewis Jr. You can check out my show, Lake Lewis Jr. Show. It's on Radio 1. In 2 weeks, it'll be on ESPN Radio, and you can subscribe to it via any major podcast carrier. I write for Heavy.com. Just a lot of stuff going on, man. Doing some coverage for CBS 6 in Richmond. Also do some stuff for ABC 7 in DC as well. And it's just NFL Insider. That's the brand right now.
Love it. All right. Well, you were there yesterday at the joint practice between the Patriots and the Commanders. Let's get your big takeaways from yesterday. I know you got to watch two fields at once, so that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But how did you walk away from that practice yesterday, feeling from the Commander standpoint?
It is what it is, and I'll say what that is. Of course, is that we had to watch both fields simultaneously, and we didn't have the privilege of, and Scott covering the team for so long, and Anthony as a player. Media, we're used to being on the field where you can walk around the perimeter of practice. That wasn't the case yesterday. Ourselves and Patriots media, were designated to behind the far left field on a hill, basically, on the back of the end zone. And, trying to look over to the other side to see what the defense is doing, and not that they're just on the other side, but they're on the far end of the other side if they're doing 2 minutes, so their backs are to you. It was tough, to kind of navigate to see everything. First and foremost, I will say the Patriots PR staff was wonderful, but, that was the hand we were dealt with. So between writing in my tablet and trying to text and look at two fields, that wasn't going to happen. So it was just more or less, I'll gather all my information. I have to do, 2 stand-ups after practice and interview some guys. That's when, for me, I'd be able to do everything. So what did I take away from it? What I took away from the practice was it was designated for the offenses, and that's why the Patriots offense moved the ball pretty much at will against Washington's defense, and it was the same thing going on with Jayden on the other side as well. You couldn't hit the quarterback, right. What a shock, right?
Sure.
You couldn't really get to him, and then when you did, the play continued. So a lot of times, a 2 to 3 second play that would have been dead in normal NFL play, those plays extended for 5 seconds, and you already know, they're going to be able to get it to a receiver or tight end anytime they want, and that's what we saw.
Well, that's not too bad. I mean, the distance of where y'all had to sit at, that's tough, because I know those eyes, you need binoculars to really get anything done, but to be efficient, they have to split everybody up. Player-wise, I've heard a lot about Trey Amos. What has been your feel about him his past couple of days? Obviously, it's hard to see him at camp, but his performance so far in training camp, what have you had to say about Trey Amos?
Man, that kid's a stud. I mean, he's a star in the making for sure. I think he's going to have the same type of impact that Mikey Sainristil had last year. I think Trey can have that same type of impact, if not more. Not to say that, he's a better player than Mikey, but I think, when you look at what he can do, he's a bigger corner. He's a guy that, has really great ball tracking skills, something that, let's face it, the secondary in Washington's been devoid of for a while up until last year. But I think that this is a guy that can come in right away. He's starting. I mean, he's opposite Marshawn. Mikey's more in the slot and able to roam around and do a lot of the things we saw him do at Michigan. So I think for Trey to be able to come in and be able to battle the way he has, to be able to go up against a Debo Samuel in practice, obviously it would be great if Terry was there too, and Trey's had some history playing against Terry briefly as far as OTAs and things like that. So I think for him to be able to come in and do what he's done, it's just going to make this defense so much better on the back end.
It's interesting you bring up those names, and and whether you saw from Sandersville last year was obviously very good. Everybody's hoping Lattimore's back to his old self, but then there's even these other depth pieces, right? Jonathan Jones can play. We saw Igbenogany play in stretches last year. So, how do you see those guys fitting in? Because it seems like this secondary is much deeper than last year going into the season. They've got a lot more options at their disposal.
Yeah, I think the secondary literally can be one of the top 5 secondaries. Well, as far as corner room, so
Sure.
overall, I think the secondary is going to be very good too with the safeties. But I think the corner room could be one of the top 5 corner rooms in the NFL right now. I mean, they have that much depth, and I think for everything that they've done, Adam Peters, this type of players that he's bringing in, they fit the mold. If you look at Trey, he's very similar, obviously, to Sean, to Marshawn Lattimore, and then if you look at Jonathan Jones, you see a little bit of Mikey in him, as well. So everything fits the bill, and I think that they have that tremendous depth that you're going to need, obviously, playing against the Eagles and teams like that, and the Cowboys now with Pickens there. You need all the cornerback help you can get. So I do think that this room right now is stacked up and ready, and I think that they can play different type of styles too. If you have, smaller slot guys that can run around and do everything, well, you have Mikey and you have Jonathan Jones who can cover these guys, and so can Noah as well. But if you want to get physical, and we all know the monster in the room when they play against the Eagles and A.J. Brown, and then even if you look at Dallas now with Pickens, because he did work on them last year when he was in Pittsburgh. You have now 2 cover guys that are physical, who, by the way, are very feisty as well. And that was on display yesterday at the joint practice.
I love it. And I love when you get into seeing different color, right? Everybody's been going against each other for weeks, and you get tired of your guy jumping your route. So getting to go against somebody else is good to release that little frustration. Going into this game, looking at the linebacker position, my guy that I've been paying attention to is Kane Medrano. Saw he was getting some reps at the ones on the field early. What have you seen with him, and how can he make an impact this season right away?
When I told people back in, mini camp that this guy there's something about him that just looks like a star. I mean, like he's uber athletic. He's their fastest linebacker. And, you think of Frankie and the impact that he had last year being that athletic, type of linebacker. With Kane, I could venture to tell you he might be more athletic than Frankie. And, obviously
Wow.
He's younger and hasn't done anything yet, but you can see each week the confidence is growing. And I do know from talking to some folks that what they're really were looking for with some of the younger linebackers, Jordan McGee, Dom Hampton, and obviously Kane, they wanted to see if somebody can match Bobby, not so much as far as the physical aspect of the game, but the mental aspect, who could be that other smart linebacker to fit in with Bobby and Frankie. And I can tell you, Kane has emerged. Jordan McGee's, nicked up right now. You can't go in depth as far as the injury, but, it could be concerning. And I think that Kane has taken advantage of that. He's got more reps. He's just answered the bill. And right now, if you ask me right now, he's their 3rd linebacker. It doesn't surprise me either, because he's a guy that was drafted, and you guys know how it works, and Anthony doesn't like hearing that, but
If you're performing, it doesn't matter though,
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that caveat in there, but yeah, they drafted these guys to get them on the field.
Sure.
And one thing we do know about this regime is that if you perform, you will play. And he's performing at a high level right now. And he actually looked really well yesterday as well. So he hasn't done anything to hurt his chances. I think we'll see a lot of him on Friday. And, if he obviously flashes and continues to do what he's doing, don't be surprised if he's the 3rd linebacker week 1 against the Giants.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Just his stats wise, he's a 4.46 guy, right? 10.5 broad jump, 38-inch vertical, 6th year senior. So he's played a lot of football, seen a lot of snaps, and his his linebacker coach is Ken Norton, one of the best to ever
Yes,
do
he's
it. I think he's
familiar.
going to be okay. I think he's going to
Yeah,
be okay.
yeah. And he's gotten bigger too. He I remember seeing him when he first got drafted. He looked more like a safety, like,
Mm.
oh, this guy might be a strong safety in the making. It was actually, I was telling people he could be Cooper DeJean, for
Mm.
Washington. And you remember how they had to figure out in Philly really how to
Sure.
use Cooper's strengths. But I think Kane is a guy that can definitely cover tight ends, and I'm sure that's going to be a big part of his game for Washington. But I also think that he's a guy that is so multifaceted as far as his athletic ability that you probably could drop him in a nickel package at times, to cover middle portion of the field. So they,
Mhm.
they have themselves a good one. I'm really excited about his progression and see where he can go.
We're here, Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong, Lake Lewis Jr. is with us. You can give him a follow on the X at Lake Lewis Jr. I know Anthony's dying to ask you about the line tomorrow night, whether or not you buying into the Commanders being a 6.5 point dog per FanDuel right now. I don't know how these guys come up
Wow.
with these preseason
Hey.
lines, but more
Right.
power to them. But on a serious note, it doesn't look like the starters are going to play, right? Because you saw them yesterday. They're probably out of this game for the Commanders. We have no idea what the Patriots are doing. But do you anticipate that, though, Lake, throughout the preseason? Do you think at some point we will see Jaden Daniels in this first-team offense for a stretch and that first-team defense for a stretch as well?
Yeah, I do. It's weird because now the teams, in the past, it used to be that third preseason game was the dress rehearsal for everyone. Well, now because there's three preseason games, and if you
Right.
have, multiple joint practices, which the Commanders do, because they still have Baltimore coming up for a joint practice before the preseason game. So you're getting a lot more work than normal by having that. So the starters get a lot of work again in these joint practices, as we saw yesterday. Um, so I think it's kind of like, for me, the second game could be the game that you see Jaden and some of the starters for a series or two. And I actually think that's what's going to happen. I think obviously you're not going to see anybody tomorrow. They're not going to even be dressed. But I think next week, I think that you'll see them get a body of work in there, and then they'll get that third game off. I know that may be disappointing to some because it's a Monday night game and
Yeah.
it's Lamar and Jaden. I don't think you're going to see Lamar and Jaden because we're going to
Right.
see him in practice 2 days before, and it just makes sense to be safe. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. But I got to tell you, that whole 6 point underdog thing. I mean, they're gonna be going out there with Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman, so I think that's
Right.
probably what FanDuel's banking on there. And then let's put this in perspective. When you talk about starters that could possibly be playing, well, he's not necessarily a starter, so to speak, at least not yet. I think he's going to be sooner than later, and that's Josh Connolly Jr., who had a really good day yesterday. I think you'll see him Friday. I think you'll see him play, get some considerable reps because, as you know, young guys that are developing, they need all the work they can get. And it would be good for him to continue to have this kind of confidence that he clearly was showing yesterday. Everyone's talking about this guy was struggling, and that's not true. Let's face it, if
Yeah.
you're going up against Von Miller in your
Yeah.
first ever camp, and you're going up against Javon Kinlaw, who's like one of the largest humans ever, you're going to struggle at times. You're going to, and it's not even so much struggling. You're just having to adapt to see what's going on. But I've said it all along. It's going to make Sundays a lot easier for him going up against those
Yeah.
guys every snap and every day in practice.
Yeah, it's gonna make Sunday so slow. Like he's gonna be back there thinking this is easy. This is cake in this instance. I just happened to
It
be
looked
wearing
like
the
it
hog.
yesterday.
I was ended up wearing the hog shirt just for this instance because I was seeing JP Finlay tweeted that the offensive line looked great. Wiley was
Oof.
looking good. Tunsil was looking amazing. Overall, how much of an improvement has this offensive line made? I know it's just a little bit into training camp, but overall, just right now, how much of an improvement have they made?
Night and day. I mean, and they were solid last year. People don't understand that offensive line was put together quickly through free agency and draft, and Brandon Coleman was playing left tackle. They were platooning him and Cornelius Lucas. I mean, it was a lot of stuff going on last year. So Bobby Johnson, did a wonderful job, and shout out to him because he's got me on a diet plan right now too, so it's killing me. But he came in and he changed the way the offensive line moved and some of their schemes. And now that they have more pieces in place, they look like they're at another level. And we haven't even mentioned Big Sam Cosme, who looks really good, who, probably
Yep.
is going to be back by week 5, if you can believe that. That's
Wow.
unbelievable. So this offensive line, another unit that has the potential, by season's end for us to be talking about one of the better offensive lines in the NFL.
All right. Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And all right, here we go. We waited this long. Terry McLaurin, the hold in right now. We haven't heard any good news about progress or anything of that nature, but we've also not heard anything terrible like that he's really, ready to run out. He warned his coach he was going to ask for a trade. I don't think Micah Parsons did that in Dallas, obviously. And good news is, Josh Harris isn't out there saying, hey, Terry could get hit by a car tomorrow. So I don't know if we should pay him. I mean, he's not saying any crazy crap like that. Nobody's
Right.
talking on the Commander side of it. It's been very tight-lipped on their end of it. So what's your take on what's happening? And to you, is there a date where if he is not back practicing that this is really going to be a problem for the season?
I'll start with the date. I think he has to be in a week before week 1. Okay. So when that Ravens game comes around, there's a week off after that, before the season. So basically you have a 2-week span. So I would say if he's not in a week within that Ravens game, not that, he's going to be on the field, but I just
Right.
mean something's getting done here so that they play Baltimore and then you have a day off. And then that Wednesday back to a normal schedule, he needs to be back on that practice field because, Anthony will tell you, soft tissue injuries do pop up. And I don't care whatever type of work you're doing. You could be doing Peloton hits all day. But the bottom line is, if you're not out on that field, it's a different type of workout. So they're going to need him, and I think that 2-week period before they play the Giants would be really good to get things done. And I think things are going to get done. They're not trading Terry McLaurin, and I think both parties have to budge here. I think they're going to probably have to come up to probably at 3-0. And, Adam's going to have to, accept it because the bottom line is Terry has his feet dug in the sand here, and there's a line that's been drawn. And you don't want this thing to get messy. I don't think it's messy yet, but it's starting to be alarming. But you don't want it to get messy because all the positive will be tarnished at that point.
When you see the regimes change and they always say, oh, well, this isn't their guy, this isn't his guy. I feel like this is one of those situations where you love him as a person, as a human. Terry McLaurin, great human being, but he's still not my guy. You know what I'm saying? And yes, the premise of saying I'm not paying somebody $30 million, that's because it's never been done before, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has to do it. But the issue is this for me is Terry's been through the ringer with this organization. And even though you haven't been here for that, I think that the goodwill that with the fan base and everything that you've done so far, you really want to wipe away a lot of things that have been good in the past few months. Don't pay Terry McLaurin. It's not like you're saying you got to give him 5 years, 150 and let me get out of his pocketbook because I'm sure he would love it. But you know what I'm saying? People are talking like they're trying to give him the half of the franchise. But y'all were screaming and crying when he was making plays for y'all. That's the part that frustrates me.
Yeah.
When he was catching the touchdown 86 yards down the sideline, now it's like, oh, well, you're too old. Man, look, he's had his best season with his best quarterback at 29. He hasn't played that much football. I think he still has some more swing up. I think you need to hurry up and get it done.
Yeah, I've been torn on this, man. I really have because, Adam's my guy, man, and they've been doing nothing but first class things since they've stepped foot here. Terry's my guy, but I will say this, you guys know I've been very outspoken on. I did not like the optics of his agent being out on the field with him at all, and I'm going to stand on that every day. It's just it wasn't a good look for a guy that's known to be classy and approachable. That just didn't need to be done because it was showing, okay, this is what my agent wants me to do, and I'm going to do it. Sometimes agents give bad advice. And
Yeah.
I think for the last two practices, for no agent to come out there with him, clearly, okay, he saw that and probably said, maybe that's not a good look. The whole issue with this whole thing, Anthony, is, and you guys have known me for years, Anthony, I am all about players getting their money, and people are like, you're coming at Terry, and what do you have against them? And I'm like, I don't have anything against Terry at all. I want him to get his money, but you hit it just on the head there. This is the first time that, Adam Peters as a GM, because he's always been an assistant, this is his time now. He's got to draw a line in the sand too, to establish that he's not going to be that GM that's going to let players break their contracts whenever they feel like they've outplayed them. It's clearly both sides trying to show who's going to get this thing done here. Well, both of them now have to kind of back off a little bit and meet here, because Adam could really undo a lot of goodwill here if they don't get Terry signed. These fans are rabid for Terry. And although he has done a lot for the organization and he's been there through the dog years, Adam's like, you don't, this isn't a lifetime achievement award. We got to look forward. And the other thing I will say is that I do think some of this is that this team's so far ahead of where people thought they were going to be in year two with these guys. I mean, they have a superstar quarterback now, and they have some really good players on this team that, by the way, are coming up for contracts at the end of the year themselves.
A lot of them.
These are all things that have to be thought about, and be very meticulous about it and be smart about it. But the smartest thing they can do is get Terry McLaurin signed so they can go on this Super Bowl run, because it's not going to happen if that's not the case.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question nobody wants to think about for the Commanders is Terry McLaurin on the field week one. FanDuel is the Giants 6.5 point underdog. If Terry McLaurin is not on the field week one, how significantly could that swing the other direction?
I mean, it's you hate to think one player means that much, but it does. And we already know the history against the Giants. Even when they beat them up in New York last year, the score was still close.
Tough game. First game, tough game. They're always tough.
Yeah. Had to have 5 field goals to win the game here, or a game back in DC. I'm in New England now, but I'll say this. I still think they beat the Giants, even if Terry's not there, because I think they're, as long as you have number 5 suiting up, I mean, he was the best player on the field in practice yesterday. That's just the way it's going to be most weeks in the NFL for him. But if you have Terry, you're going to see a different football team. I mean, I'm just clamoring to see him and Debo out there, because Debo looks totally revigorated. I mean, he looks really good. And to have both those guys, and with the young kid, Jalen Lane, it could be special, man. Terry, get this money, but you got to come back and play.
Yeah, ASAP. I need him to ramp up. I need him to ramp up and get in there, because they're having their own DB competition in New York. I checked in with my guy Brandon London. He said there is a DB competition between Deontay Banks and Cordell Flott. So that's the arch nemesis of Terry's, is old Deontay Banks. So he's got to be out there week one. That's 6.5.
I knew Brandon would tell you that too, because he's like telling me that he thinks the Giants could be a team that they could be a wild card team. Let him tell you that. Stop it, Brandon.
Man. Hey, B-Lun, man, I love you. We'll get B-Lun on week one. We'll have him on the show again.
Yeah, we will.
Man.
Well, I'll tell you what. The other thing I got to ask you before we let you go. Everybody's raving about Bill. And what Bill does every day in practice. So what did you think of Bill yesterday, whatever you got to see with him against an actual opponent? And I'm excited to see him tomorrow night. I mean, I'm excited to see him Friday night in the preseason to see him against another team's defense.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to start off by saying he fumbled.
Okay. That's important.
And that's what young people do. He's dynamic, man. Make no mistake about it. He's been turning heads all mini camp, and then all training camp. But yesterday he looked good. He looked solid. But I do think some fans need to pump the brakes a little bit, because they already have him as running back 1.
Right.
And that's come on, no, that's not happening. And by the way, who had one of the better days for Washington yesterday? Brian Robinson.
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Exactly. He was very precise, hitting his gaps, hitting his holes, and he took a couple around the edge. So all that was because the offensive line was just out there, just pancaking folks. So they're going to have, because the offensive line's playing so well, they're going to have chances for Bill to be on the field to do what he does, which is a little different from Brian.
Yeah.
But he's not taking anyone's job, but he will add to the running back room, and I think that's the way fans should look at it.
Do you see him taking those reps, those pass reps from B-Rob? Because he learned that he could catch the ball out of the backfield, but then I feel like that maybe affected his running the ball. Now, if he's focusing only on carries, do you think Bill's going to be able to take over those screens and things like that?
Not necessarily. That's something that even in practices, he's dropped some, and I'm talking about Bill. So that's not a strength of his game either.
It's an art. It's an art form to run a screen now. It's not as easy as people think.
Yeah, there is one guy though that I think fits the bill, and man, that wasn't
Well done.
intentional, but yeah, he fits the bill. But it's Demetric Felton. Demetric Felton to me is a guy that I think really is making a super strong case to be the fourth running back. He's a free agent back. He's kind of bounced around, but he's young. UCLA guy. But he's young, and he's a 4.3 guy, and he looked pretty good. All throughout camp so far. He's made some really nice plays, and they call his number quite a bit. And yesterday he had some nice plays. So, he would have scored. That was the one bad play for Josh Connerly. It was a questionable hold, but Felton took it to the outside, and it would have been a touchdown. So I think he's a guy that looks like he could be a Austin Eckler clone with faster speed. And I think that he's a guy that you want to look for on Friday night as well. Both those young backs are going to get a lot of touches Friday.
Right. He's a 6th round pick from 2021 to the Browns. He's wearing number 25. So if you get Chris Thompson vibes from him,
that's just who he looks like. He
that's who he looks like.
CT in pads, and plays very, very similar. It's kind of scary because there's been a couple times, when I've seen him run, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's like deja vu right there. But yeah, he does remind me of CT quite a bit. Yep. Remember, Chris was a great pass catching back too.
Chris was great. Good guy. It's unfortunate injuries cut his career short. Hey, Lake, man, we appreciate your time. Again, at Lake Lewis Jr. on the X. Give him a follow there to see all of his works. Looking forward to seeing a little bit of preseason and hopefully some real players sooner rather than later. So, Lake, again, thanks for joining us here on the Bleav in Commanders podcast. All
right. Good seeing you guys. Take care.
All right. For Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson, we'll be back with you next week to a little preseason recap of game one. Anthony, I'll be at camp actually Monday and Tuesday, so we'll definitely get in some news from there, but I'm excited to get up there and see it up close next week and see if we can hopefully see a number 17 sighting on the field at some point while I'm there.
Yes, indeed. Hopefully you're a little bit closer than Lake was up there in Foxborough. They can get you actually next to the field.
Yeah, I think I will be next to the field. All right. For Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson, until next time, Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network. Everybody have a good day. We'll see you soon.
Talk to you.